This is currently the best obbyist on Roblox. However, going back all the way in time as of 2006, Roblox had less than 30,000 users on its platform and obbies weren't even called obbies yet. They were rather mostly referred to as training courses, with the first Roblox obby, aka the first ever training course to be made on Roblox, having been made by Reverse Polarity, who back then went by the name of Jacob XX Duel, and he is also the founder of the Phoenix Fire Army, which was a clan of Roblox users made back in August of 2006. However, it's sadly impossible to truly know who the best quote-unquote obbyist could have been back then, as not only did people only play training courses to get better at overall gameplay rather than just parkour by itself, but obbies hadn't even become a proper thing yet, not to mention that you could only create one game per account. So because Reverse Polarity wanted to make a training course for his own clan, which was the Phoenix Fire Army, he had created the account PF Train CPT, and turned the starter place into what's known as the first obby ever created and discovered on Roblox up to this day. However, there had also been a few different training courses created later on into 2006, such as Draco's Army Training and Birder Dude's Place, which was just a clone of Draco Army Training, along with the game Lava Rush by Test 888. However, once again, obbies weren't a proper thing at the time, so it's not really possible to determine who the best obbyist from 2006 could have been. But it could have most likely been some random player that was active inside of these training courses out of like the 30,000 players back then. Sadly for 2007 and for the next upcoming years, the same story kinda repeats itself, as it's quite literally impossible to truly put anybody as the actual best obbyist on the platform back then. However, as of April 2007, the game Waffle Boy's Obstacle Course was created, which was not only the first appearance of the term obstacle course, but this also possibly changed the entire history of obbies as we know them today, simply due to the name alone, and because it was also put on the Roblox developer blog, which led to it becoming quite well known for its time. Oh wait, I forgot to also mention that this obstacle course was also really difficult for its time, so yeah, people were definitely improving with their creations that eventually led to torturing players by making them play the craziest obbies for hours non-stop years later into the future. I mean, hey, even back then some people were complaining about how difficult it was on the Roblox blog, which is quite silly. And that's pretty much it for 2007, because most other obstacle course games had just been escape or breakout games, and aren't really anything crazy. 2008 is the big year because the obby format was finally invented, all because of some random video with 600 views, simply going by the name Random Obstacle Course. So yeah, that's what started the entire format up to this day. Well, not entirely, because people had begun to use the term obby quickly after this, quite often. However, were there any quote-unquote best Roblox obbyists on Roblox back then? Well, of course not. So let's move on to somewhere in time such as the year 2015, because that's around the time skill-based things actually became a much bigger topic on Roblox. As of 2015, Roblox obbies had drastically advanced in both quality and difficulty, and early competitive obbying could have been pleasant among some clans back in 2015, because back then Roblox clans often used to make difficult obstacle courses in order to improve at the game and in order to improve at sword fighting. Since yeah, believe it or not, a lot of the origins of competitive obbying nowadays backtracks all the way to competitive sword fighting, which was an absolute massive thing on Roblox back in the day. Oh, and the game Uber Obby was also discovered to be from 2015, which could technically be considered to be the first ever tiered obby on Roblox. Well, not really, because tiers hadn't been a thing yet, although this obby was extremely difficult for its time, so one could only wonder what players had accomplished by this point, even if that means there wasn't any known specific best obbyist on Roblox back then. However, it is rumored that there was an old obby community between 2015 or earlier up until 2016, which only allowed the best of the best Roblox obbyists on the entire platform to be part of this group, with some people in this mysterious group being Goatist, Desolating Dejection, Hard32, and Zephyrist, which brings us to the player by the username of Goatist. And even though this account was most likely an alt account, it was allegedly the second victor of the infamous tiered obby Tower of Glory, which back then would have easily been the hardest obby to ever be completed on Roblox. Although this account's legitimacy remains a myth up to this day, so therefore it can't be fully confirmed. But we are just getting to the point where professional obbying had just started getting heated, since there actually is a top 1 best Roblox obbyist from early 2018 up until late 2018, who was a part of the infamous original Obby Legion group, made by Regionality as a way to bring competitive obbyists together and create a community. And many of the most skillful OG Roblox obbyists had joined this community, such as Theodoric, Jacob Box, Khan 2005, Akira, and many others, with one of those players being E_CS. And E_CS turned out to completely start decimating his entire competition within just 1 year, even though he had only really gotten interested into difficult obbies as of 2017. First starting off by having been the first person to complete every single obby that was part of the Obby Legion group, and he had completed all of these obbies quite easily as well, which back then was of course an insanely impressive achievement, even though competitive obbying was an extremely niche topic. Not to mention that E_CS was also an extremely skilled speedrunner, as he had speedrun the Tower of Heck until he had the world record speedrun, along with many other world records at the time. And no, this is not Tower of Hell for all the RealRosa fans watching this video, this is the Tower of Heck, which was the first ever tower to be created as part of the Eternal Towers of Hell game, which back then went by the name of Kiddy's Towers of Hell. And actually this game is the entire reason behind why Tower of Hell was created, for anybody who's not familiar with that. Sadly though, after he had done all of the hardest obbies ever created on Roblox at the time, he quit shortly after and lost motivation to push himself further, resulting to most of his competition catching up to him as of early 2019. And most of his competition ended up being around the same skill set without a clear best obbyist at the time, which mostly consisted of players such as Jacob Box, Zenkoina, 60mm, Theodoric, and a few other obbyists such as Khan 2005 and Aethernack. But things were about to take an unexpected turn as of 2019. Ayo though, I see that you're also enjoying this video, so I thought I should mention that I would really appreciate if you could subscribe and like this video. Trust me, your single subscription and thumbs up really do matter and support me a lot more than you think. Like, I'm recording this voiceover at 4 AM, I think I deserve a subscribe reel, but anyways. Aethernack first began playing competitive obbying inside of Kiddy's Towers of Hell, around September of 2018. However, unlike everybody else at the time, Aethernack would go on to improve much faster at obbies and end up verifying the Tower of Glory as of April 2019, which was the top 1 hardest obby completed on Roblox at the time. He had also completed the old Pillars tiered obby, which was also one of the hardest obbies at the time. And to quickly set an example of how difficult these obbies really were even for their time, both of these tiered obbies have harder raw difficulty gameplay than the Tower of Champions Road. Not to also mention that back then everybody was on 60 FPS since you couldn't use an FPS unlocker for legitimate completions. Sadly though, Aethernack would also end up losing interest in obstacle courses and end up going inactive shortly after because he focused on becoming one of the best players in the rhythm game Osomania, which he was also extremely skilled at. However, as of late 2019, the Tower of Glory would get its second victor, Khan 2005. Khan 2005 first began playing hard obbies as of 2018, but he went on to also improve extremely quickly beyond all of his competition. However, Khan 2005 has a very long history of obbies behind his name, as he went on to not only compete against an illegitimate player known as Akira, but also took the top 1 best obbyist spot for an entire year as of 2019, up until the end of 2020, pushing the human limits beyond anybody else, with some of his hardest obby completions being the Tower of Generation failure, which was an extremely historical moment for the Eternal Towers of Hell community, Shinku no Naraku, which is a tier 16 obby, Tower of Glory 10 times in a row, Clouds, which is another tier 16 obby, with extremely hard raw gameplay, Tower of True Skill world record in 3 minutes and 17 seconds, and good progress into Stairway to Heaven as he was doing start position runs. So just to put into perspective how f***ing insane that is, Stairway to Heaven remains as the second hardest obby ever completed on Roblox as of right now, having been finally verified by BoomSazok 4 years later, and Khan 2005 was attempting this obby all the way back in 2020. So yeah, I cannot describe just how mental it is to have done all of this back in 2020, back when competitive obbying was also at an all-time peak, resulting in Khan 2005 gathering 15,000 subscribers back then, which he nowadays remains at 19,000 subscribers. Sadly though, once a legend doesn't always remain a legend at the very top, as Khan 2005 would slowly become inactive over time and stop pushing the human limits of obbies, losing the spot of the best Roblox obbyist around the middle of 2021. Despite that though, he still remains as one of the best obbyists on Roblox up until this very day, even though he's gone completely inactive. So who could possibly be next after somebody as mentally challenging as Khan 2005? Well, around early 2021, word had spread that the player known as Best Here Goes Nothing was the new top 1 best obbyist on Roblox, after quietly improving over the years behind everybody's back, considering he kinda popped out of nowhere, after Khan stopped pushing the human limits of what's possible. So Best Here Goes Nothing had completed the first tier 17 obby on Roblox as of December 23rd, 2022, with this obby being the Conquering. However, he also decided to attempt another tier 17 obby known as Elegance, which back then was considered to be the tier 18 difficulty, even though it now stands at the tier 16 difficulty in reality. And even though he sadly never completed Elegance, he had sparked up hope towards this achievement being possible among the top players at the time. Sadly though, Best Here Goes Nothing would go on to quit obbies shortly after this. However, here is the plot twist behind Best Here Goes Nothing, as despite him being considered the best obbyist on Roblox for a few months, the true skill that Khan 2005 really had could have actually been better the entire time, considering just how insane Khan 2005 really was at raw difficulty. So who could possibly be the next top 1 Roblox obbyist after Khan's legacy controversy along with Best Here Goes Nothing. Well, whilst players such as Best Here Goes Nothing along with other top obbyists at the time was struggling to complete Elegance as it was an insane jump in difficulty, a player by the name of ETMroad had joined the community around early 2021 and had then beaten the new top 1 hardest Roblox obby on Roblox known as Anatawa Horobimasu around the middle of 2021, which absolutely decimated any Ito Tower or any other obby in terms of pure difficulty and skill required to complete this, despite how short this obby really is, because most tiered obbies tend to be super short. However, ETMroad didn't just stop there, as he quickly went on to finally complete Elegance out of all things shortly after this achievement. So, couldn't we just put ETMroad as the best obbyist on Roblox after this? Well, no, because after completing Elegance and having this insane reaction, ETMroad has since deleted all of his previous videos and achievements, completely leaving the community without any trace. But why though? Could he have perhaps been illegitimate? Well, we will never truly know the reason behind this, but what is clear is that ETMroad had played his own important role into changing the history of obbies, even if the tier 17 obby, Elegance, had technically remained unverified. That is, until Khan 2005 made a sudden comeback with an Elegance last jump fail. Yeah, no, see, I told you, Khan 2005 was absolutely insane at raw gameplay, but anyways. This heavily motivated a bunch of the best Roblox obbyists at the time to once again start attempting Elegance, hence resulting in Fracta having verified Elegance as the new hardest obby ever completed on Roblox as of September 2022, which put him as the most likely person to be the best Roblox obbyist at the time. Oh, and may I mention that this guy still has less than 2,000 subscribers, even though he has and continues to complete a lot of the hardest obbies ever beaten on Roblox. Like, this guy is a true OG top obbyist and he's still underrated anyways. Even though Fracta had verified Elegance, Khan 2005 was still subjectively better at the time. I mean, hell, I believe that even by today's standards of the hardest obbies completed on Roblox, he could easily belong in the top 20 best Roblox obbyists if he was to come back. Sadly though, that's not happening. So let's move on to the next top 1 obbyist on Roblox, because things are about to get even crazier. And no, it's not RealRosa, neither is it Pinkleaf or whatever. This is BoomSazok, and meanwhile everything I've talked about is mostly tied to tiered obbies, BoomSazok had quickly been growing in popularity inside of the Ito community, as he had verified multiple of the hardest towers ever completed on Roblox at the time, such as the Tower of Vacant Hindrances as of September 2021, and the Tower of the Roof's Peak as of August 2022, with both of these towers standing at the horrific difficulty, which is the second hardest difficulty ever completed on Roblox. However, what finally put BoomSazok as the actual best obbyist on Roblox after everybody else had left their own part of history behind was BoomSazok's Eminubu verification, which back then was the new hardest tiered obby ever completed on Roblox, as BoomSazok had taken a turn from only completing difficult towers to doing both towers and tiered obbies, which he still does up to this day. So with all of that said, there is surely another top 1 best Roblox obbyist after the BoomSazok, right? Like, surely BoomSazok can still be at the very peak, could he? Yeah, no, that's wrong. He's literally verified the Tower of Wigglecore recently, which is the hardest obby ever completed on Roblox as of me making this video, and Stairway to Heaven 5 months ago, after nobody else could do it, and after 2 people had faked the completion of Stairway to Heaven, and he also verified back there Benjamin all the way back in July of 2023, which are all the top 3 hardest obbies ever completed on Roblox up to this very day. Well, Besides Baghdad Benjamin, since BoomSazok is literally the only player to have completed Baghdad Benjamin up to this very day. So nobody really even knows whether or not Baghdad Benjamin is more difficult than something like the Tower of Impending Doom. However, it's quite awkward to just come to an end with nothing else other than BoomSazok always remaining at the #1 spot, isn't it? Hence, we're going to talk about the historical competition along the way to get where we are right now, since there was a lot of competition for the #1 spot. Meanwhile, BoomSazok has always kept the #1 spot, such as back in August of 2023, when Literature Desk was the first ever person to complete the infamous Citadel of Infinite Void, but then everybody considered his completion illegitimate because he didn't record, and back then you couldn't use 144 FPS for some reason, which he had used in his completion, even though you now absolutely can use 144 FPS. So yeah, no, the rules for the hardest tower completions were kinda dumb back then when it comes to FPS, although this did put Skitsuna as the verifier of the Citadel of Infinite Void once he had completed it back in October of 2023, even though in reality, Literature Desk was technically the first one to verify it. It's also worth mentioning that Stairway to Heaven was also almost verified by BoomSazok before the Tower of Impending Doom was first completed, but he failed the last jump like 7 times, so rip I guess. Oh, and not to even mention that BoomSazok literally just beat the hardest jump on Roblox in the middle of me editing this video. So that's yet another one of the hardest things ever done on Roblox having been completed by BoomSazok, of course, cause he's the best obbyist. Oh, and yeah, no, RealRosa couldn't even stand a single chance in a million years going against any of these obbyists. So my bad, gang, if you fell for the clickbait, but I'd love if you could watch some more videos. Trust me, they're pretty good, I think.